welcome everyone. We're going to be together for the next couple of hours, and we'll be doing an energy transfer, and Micheila is also going to do an activation at the same time. So we'll do that partway through, but I thought we'd start with a little bit more interactive conversation, and maybe even we'll take some questions online as well. And if the need arises, even channel some things if necessary.
Sure.
So if there are any questions from anybody, feel free to type them in, and we'll read them off here and see if there's anything we need to address. Was there anybody in the room have any questions or anything you want to discuss?
So my question is very multifaceted. I know that this thing has brought a lot of peace in most of us, and also we can only see positive and good things, and then we hear something from externally, and then it's like it shakes, and then the fear comes in. And I know you mentioned earlier that you are supposed to feel whatever you're feeling because you shouldn't suppress it, and I understand that and the balance of it. So there is there's another thing that is that I'm realizing is it's something that we've all been putting off, and I'm just going to talk for myself, that I've been putting off for a few years. Now it's face to face, and it's like you must take care of this, or else you have to. You can't go anywhere. You can't run away from it. No more distractions, nothing. You must take care of it. So, in other words, this question is about personal and also collective. How do I keep my focus and avoid distractions and take care of this thing or things that I need to take care of, that needs to be taken care of, that I've been putting off for years? And the collective question is, everything, the downloads, the insights, the things that I'm seeing in the meditation is one of the things that I saw really briefly is I saw that everyone just woke up and this was all gone. And everyone was healthy and happy, and it was sunshine, and it was automatic. I don't know how I got that insight, but it was very cool. And that's my reality.
Yeah.
And I want to know how to keep that balance of fear, which is a must, it's inevitable, and also to make sure I keep spreading as a light worker, what I'm meant to do. Just keep the balance, and also take care of my personal that have been putting off, so keep my focus. So that's my question, really.
Well, it sounds to me like you're kind of already doing that, right? This is my take on it. I feel like we're always doing exactly what we're meant to do in the moment. So trying to force things right now isn't maybe the best thing to do if you're moved to actually take care of something, right? Just because this energy is here, I think it's doing its work, as long as we are going to be aligned with it in a way that allows that to come to the surface. And in my I just did a channeled course called Soul Alchemy. And what the guys were saying is the planet is kind of doing the work for us right now. There's a lot of stuff coming up right in front of our face. And we think we have to do something about it, oh gosh, this is still here and I got to do something about it. But really it's an energy. What's coming up are parts of us that need to clear because we've reached a vibration that they just can no longer be. But I don't think they're clearing necessarily like they're going away. We're alchemizing them, which means we're integrating parts of us. So we're taking the parts of us from before and we're bringing them along with us, in a new way. But in regards to the fear, as I mentioned in my transmission, the guides have been very clear about fasting from the media. I mean, I've completely and totally done that to the point where I'm not listening to YouTube, so I'm not, doing any of that stuff. And really, it's kind of took me into my own space where that's really what I'm focused on right now is what's going on in my own world, which is a great way to just stay aligned. But of course, we're going to have a little bit of fear, and remember, I think we have to go gentle with this. And, this is something that was coming into my last course was we have to treat ourselves like that inner child, like a mother would the child who's in fear, right? And gosh, you wouldn't look at a child and say, don't be in fear. You would say, gosh, I'm sorry you feel that way. You have every right to feel that way. And I think we get stuck on that in this community that we judge ourselves for being a certain way. And my gosh, there's a lot of fearful stuff going on. It's uncertainty is what it is. I think the fear is coming from uncertainty, and that's where we're being called to use those tools and those parts of us that have advanced, is that we've been working on becoming comfortable in the unknown. And that's something that's a human trait that I think we really need to get a hold of right now. And that's why this is here, because the unknown is why we came. And we're always trying to control and make sure that, nothing's going to change. So being uncomfortable or being comfortable in the uncomfortable is not an easy thing for everybody. But I think if we can get out of the attachment to the media and what's happening, that's a huge, huge part of it, And I agree with you about the collective. I think this is an opportunity for us right now to really bring to the surface the parts of us that we couldn't grasp onto before, that we've hid away. And not everyone's going to take that opportunity, and that's okay. But, if we stay in our realm and we allow that to come up gradually, gently, and not try to force it, I think we're in this sweet spot, where this is really going to move us forward. I had a message come in that I gave to my inner circle the other day, and I'm not sure if I talked about it earlier, but so they were talking about how emotions are harmonics. Right? So every emotion is a harmonic. It has a sound. And when we are imprinting energy, so when we are imprinting a timeline, these harmonics are what allow that to shift and change. So it's okay. There could be a spectrum of emotions. Like we can actually feel sadness or fear for the collective and what's happening, but also be aligned with what's going on. And that's kind of like having faith and feeling into what's happening, but also having faith, which is something we're not used to actually feel and be in a conscious state of, okay, this is really happening. But I also believe that it's happening because of this, or we're going in this direction. And that's something that I think is an individual balance that we all have to find. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but the emotions being harmonic, for example, I was explaining this the other day. My parents, my family, they're really in a state of fear, and I can hear it when I talk to them on the phone. You can hear it in people's voices, right? There's this kind of high-pitched, really fast, and that's the harmonic, right? And that's what we receive back, is we're receiving the harmonic emotion of that tone of voice, and it comes. That's how we feel it, and we absorb it. And so I've been making a conscious decision to bring my voice into a really, low, kind of slow balance to meet that harmonic with something different. And it's just a subtlety that I think we have to get into, that we can feel in ourselves and bring ourselves back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, as you said, like stay away from the media. I've never been able to watch news. I don't know what it is about me, or movies that have like high negative impact, because I'm very sensitive to that. So it's really coming from either family members or, certain people like that, are, in third dimensional, I guess. So
and a lot of us are holding space for that, and that's how I feel when I'm interacting with maybe a family member who doesn't have the same viewpoint that I do, or, I feel like I'm a conduit to hold space for them. And that's how I can show up in that even-keeled harmonic, to just let them cycle through and talk about what they need to talk about. And a lot of people in my community are concerned because they're absorbing the energies, and we are. There's no mistake. I mean, we are absorbing energies, but I think a lot of us who are here in this community have the bandwidth to do that, or we wouldn't be doing it.
Absolutely.
It's a gift that we have. I think that the only reason we absorb energies or we take things in is because there's something that we're meant to send out. that is also going to shift that in some way. And that's unique for everybody. So you wouldn't be absorbing something if you weren't already shifting it or changing it through something, whether it's energetic in the way you respond. You know, a lot of people have that kind of tone of their voice. I notice a lot of counselors and intuitives kind of have that vocal tone that puts people into a calmer state. Ethann's got that big time. You know, everyone has their little subtleties that help hold space for the collective. And a lot of us are doing that right now. So you have to discharge that too. And again, that's a unique thing. I had some questions about that. Like, how do we purge this or discharge it? And there's no one answer for everybody. You've got to come to your comfort level with your own process. You know, if it's crystals, if it's herbs, if it's plants, if it's music, if it's meditation. For me lately, it's just been activity, you know, baking, doing stuff like that. It takes me out of the zone of, you know, but I certainly feel it. And I can tell you that as a sensitive, even before this really erupted, I had a lot of pain in my body that just came out of nowhere. Very bizarre pain throughout my entire body. And, you know, I realize now it was building up, you know, for what was coming in the collective. And the second I realized that's what it was and allowed it to be there, completely dropped. And I can still feel it. Like some mornings I wake up and I feel it in my body, like my body's absorbed a lot while I was sleeping. And if I get into the realm of, oh my gosh, my body, right? But if I realize that it's not really, it's what's coming from the collective, it, you know, and I observe it and just let it be there, it just goes straight down. So that's what works for me personally, but everybody's unique.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I do realize that I'm very patient in my responses, which is kind of not usual.
Yeah. So.
I think the important thing to pay attention to is that the real virus is not the virus itself, if it's even a virus, or whether it was manufactured or whether it just happened naturally. The bigger virus that's going around is the fear of the virus and the fear of everything else. The fear of coughing around somebody, or if somebody sneezes 2 feet away from you, or the fear of not enough toilet paper, so we have to buy all of it. So there's the fear of everything right now. The fear of the government, the fear of vaccines being enforced upon us, and so many fears. And that's the bigger virus, and that is what's causing the biggest problem, and what's going to have the longest, or rather the farthest reaching ramifications. The virus, whether it's real or not, will come and go. And it may be gone tomorrow, it may be gone a year from now, doesn't matter. The repercussions of the fear are going to be much more far-reaching and long-lasting. So that's the important thing. And so to address your earlier point, I think, you know, we didn't have to be here today to do this event. Everybody else canceled their event, and but we chose to be here because, well, first of all, you have to go about your life and do things that bring you joy and that are important in the world. You can't stop because you're afraid of the circumstances that are happening. It's that fear that's causing a lot of these problems. Now, if we go back, I want to, you know, first of all, I want to mention that we all wanted to be here right now. And I'm sure many of you question that in this moment, but especially as light workers, those of you who are a little bit farther along on the path than others, not that that's good or bad or positive or negative, it's just the way it is. It's just where you are. You chose to be here in this time because this was going to be such a big shift in consciousness on the planet. And you wanted to be here to see that and to be a part of that and to help usher that in. So, in a way, you have a responsibility to uphold that and to be one of those beacons of light in this time, to not be in fear. Doesn't mean you have to do that much. You don't have to buck the system or fight the good fight or protest on the streets. If you want to do those things, then fine. But all you need to do is simply not be in fear. Live your life and do something that makes you happy. So my general philosophy in life for decades has been focus on what's working and ignore what isn't. So if, like Micheila saying she baked whatever she baked.
I made vegan banana nut muffins.
There you go. So
I've not done that in years. So
yeah.
It was fun.
I mean, the thing is, right now, and this is happening all over the world, but let's just speak about Americans because we're here. And a lot of Americans are sitting at home with their kids and they're stressed out because they are not working, or they're afraid of catching a virus, or they're afraid of their neighbors sneezing on them, or whatever. And so they're not living their lives. And so let's say you are in that situation where you have a work environment that's closed and you can't go to work, but you're home. Well, if you're home, find something that makes you happy while you're home. Maybe you go for a walk. You're sitting around with your kids. How often do parents these days have an opportunity to even be around their kids as much as they are right now? Or even to take a vacation, even if it's a forced vacation. Enjoy it as a vacation. Try not to stress about all of the negatives that are happening in the world, and look at the situation you're in now and perceive what a gift it might be. Now, in the United States in particular, the long-term effects of this are not so great, but they are going to be starting to give out money for people. So even though you're sitting at home, you're going to get paid to sit at home. So at least you get a vacation. Now, maybe you're not going to make as much money as you would have if you were working, but you're not going to go completely broke anyway anytime soon. Now, the consequences of the government doing that are going to cause financial repercussions down the line, but at least for now, you have a vacation. Now, maybe you just want to sit at home and vegetate and watch Netflix, and that's good too. All of these, there's so many opportunities right now. But if you are constantly focused on the problem, which is to Micheila's point about watching the media, because the media always focuses on the problem and how bad the problem is and how the problem is getting worse, and senators and governors in California say 50% of the population is going to get this virus. How do they even know? It's just fear that's building on fear. So in the end, yes, that will probably happen because so many people are afraid of catching the virus that they may just sneeze and think they have a virus when they just sneezed. That's it, right? So we have to be careful that we don't create a virus where there isn't one. There may not even be one. Maybe we're just creating it. Maybe somebody in China said they had the virus when they had the flu, and next thing you know, the whole country shut down, and now everybody in the world thinks they have a virus, and now everybody has a virus. So the virus may or may not exist, but the real problem is the fear around it. And I also want to, so my suggestion is, find something in your life that gives you joy and focus on that. I'm not saying don't pay attention to the news. If you want to, fine, but don't let the news become your focus, and don't let it drive how you feel. Focus instead on things that make you happy. It's spring. You could plant a garden or go for a walk. Lots of things. Take your dog for a walk. All these things that you probably could not ordinarily do, you have an opportunity to do. Now, we're here today. There are a lot of people joining online, more than usual. Well, that's because we chose to do this event today. We didn't have to do that. So in the same way, do something just because you want to, because it's an opportunity to enjoy your life. And for those of you who are sitting at home and maybe you've lost your jobs or you will, this is a great opportunity maybe to do that thing that you never thought you could do, or that you had the time to do, or the resources to do. This time is a gift. So you have to look at it that way and focus in that direction. Now, I want to sort of look at some of the other times when things like this occurred. I mean, if we just go back to September of 2011, for example, when we had the World Trade Center situation. While we're all focused on the virus, what's really happening is something completely different. Just like in the time of the World Trade Center collapse, everybody was focused on that. But really there was something else that was happening, which is there was an orchestrated financial collapse that was taking place over the next several years. And a lot of limitations and controls were put in place on society as using that as the reason for it. So soon after the World Trade Center, we had the Patriot Act, and we had surveillance systems and things like that. So nowadays we have facial recognition and all of these things that came into being from that one situation. 2008, the next financial collapse, which again started with a lot of, with companies, banks going under, being bailed out, which resulted in a financial collapse in the years that happened that we finally recovered. Well, we didn't really ever recover from, but it appeared that we recovered from. And again, more controls were put in place. And here we are again. It's a virus, or is it? Maybe not. But what's actually happening, so while you're looking over here at the magician who's showing you this thing over here, really what's happening is over here. So shift your focus and pay attention to what's actually happening. This is not about a virus. This is because the global economy has reached a place where it needs to shift. And those individuals who are in control of that economy are causing an intentional collapse of that. So what will happen when the whole world shuts down, which it has done, over the course of weeks, months of this year? Well, nothing is being produced, no one is earning, people are out of work, and it's going to result in a lot of repercussions. The US government is printing $1 trillion per day right now in order to bail out the system, ultimately which will go to banks and large corporations and some to the people as well. But that money that's being printed out of thin air is money that the taxpayers will pay for in the years ahead. So now I know I'm painting sort of a gloomy picture at the moment, but I'm doing it for a reason. So this is what's going to happen. Over the next several years, we are going to deal with the financial fallout of this situation. So the virus doesn't really matter. What really matters is that situation that's happening in the background, and that's really the purpose or the outcome of all of this, and probably even the reason why this virus is being blown out of proportion, because there has to be something that the global system has to blame for what's coming financially. Now, so that's going to happen. And as a result, over the next couple of years, we are going to see more restrictions, again, placed on society, more control systems and things like that in order to monitor the people and manage society better, just like happened in 2001 and 2008 again now. Except this situation is going to be much more intense than the previous two. But I want to bring you back to 2001. What happened as a result of all of that is people started waking up. Not that they hadn't already, but that was a major awakening moment for the global consciousness, where because of that event, so many people started questioning the system and the government and what really happened, and consciousness started to expand, and we moved to where we were years later. And in 2008, same thing happened. Consciousness expanded through the difficulties, through the density that was being processed at that time. And again, we expanded and people are questioning the system again. This one is going to be probably the biggest of all three of those occurrences, where because the difficulty of the situation is going to be that much more severe, more density will be processed through this experience. And as a result, the awakening that will occur will be even much more broad than in the previous two instances. This is why you may be noticing some of your family members or friends who ordinarily aren't open to these sorts of things are starting to open their minds and starting to see things or question the system that they would not have questioned even just a few years ago. So yes, the path ahead is not going to be great in the world, not for you individually, that you choose. You can live in this difficult time in bliss if you want to. But globally, yeah, there is some turmoil and turbulence ahead and financial collapses and bankruptcies, and that's all going to happen. I just got an email a couple of days ago from a mailing list that I subscribe to, a company that I buy products from. It's been around since the 1930s, and they just filed for bankruptcy. So this is the beginning of a house of cards of bankruptcies and failures that are going to occur as a result of this situation. But that's really the purpose of this. So as in the process, a lot of the hierarchical systems will collapse, and a lot of people are going to wake up and question the system. I mean, now there was a question posted on, I think, Micheila's Facebook group the other day about how there are so many interesting Netflix documentaries these days about how power has been abused by companies and governments and world leaders and such, and how it's surprising that a major network would even put stuff like that out there.
Yeah.
But see, this is what's happening, is more and more people are starting to question the system and seeing through it. And as a result, things are changing. So this event that's taking place now is not about a virus. It's just what we see in the news, but it's really about a massive awakening that's about to take place. And so for the next couple of years, we're going to be in that pressure period of the consequences of what is taking place now. The consequences will be much worse than the virus. But on a global scale, not for all of you individually. But on the other side of that, we are going to emerge into, into a very enlightened, positive future. And so, I've seen this for a long time because I study astrology and follow the cycles, but I right now Pluto and Saturn are in Capricorn, and next year or later this year, I think Saturn enters into Aquarius and squares the planet Uranus. So what we will see are more restrictions placed on society in this period of time, as is already happening right now. Governments are forbidding people from traveling or holding events or whatever, but the thing is, nobody really has to listen to those things, right? I mean, there's no law that prevents people from holding events. It's just people out of fear have decided to comply and give up their own power to an authority. And so we've ended up here. But that's going to change. In the next several years, people are going to look at this event and start questioning it in the same way they questioned 2001 and 2008, and they're going to start asking questions as to, well, what really happened? And that's going to, bring about a whole new series of Netflix specials, of course, in the future that you'll be able to watch about what's happening now. You're living in a moment that is going to be discussed and is going to be talked about for a decade or more. But on the positive side, it's a very pivotal moment as we shift to a much better world. And you can see little signs of that everywhere. So in 2022, and I talk about this all the time, that we're entering into sort of an age of Aquarius in 2022. And that's really why these occurrences are happening. The establishment or the current hierarchical system, they're sort of losing control of everybody. And so this is sort of the last effort to do something before that occurs, because in 2022 everything shifts the other way, and then we'll be moving more and more toward a freer society. So all of the restrictions that have been put in place in the last decades, and that will be in the next year or two, will all break apart and be replaced by different systems and different opportunities for greater freedom and a better world. So the time that we're in now may not feel great, but it is really, it's really not a bad thing. It's an opportunity for all of you to explore other areas of your life. You know, every hardship in our life is an opportunity to grow and expand in a different way. And Micheila, in the channeling session, mentioned this, and I always say this too, which is at every moment in our time where a problem exists, a solution exists as well. And one example I used recently was in 2008 when we had the global financial situation, where a lot of banks were bailed out and the Occupy Wall Street movement was taking place, and a lot of people were really mad about how the government gave all this money, free money to the banks, and didn't do anything to help the people. Well, that was the problem. But at the same moment that was happening, at the exact same moment, cryptocurrencies were born. And cryptocurrencies are the answer to that problem. They solve the problem of centralized banking systems and governments that control the economy and the people have no control. Cryptocurrencies are a move toward a society where the people have control and banks don't exist, or may serve a different purpose than they do now. And now cryptocurrencies are a real thing. They exist. In only 10 years or 11 years, they have become a major force in the world. So while all of you are sitting here, and many of you are freaking out because you're almost out of toilet paper, there is something happening in the world, or probably a lot of some things, that are going to change everything. And those things are being born right now. Maybe some of you will make those things become born. And this is the time for you to do that. So in this time, while you're sitting around at home with nothing to do, create that something. And that, I think, is the best opportunity we have right now, is to create those things that will change the world in a couple of years and into the decades to come into the future. There are so many positive things that are taking place in the world right now that most people don't notice because they don't report them in mainstream media. But if you look, and if you have the right focus and perspective, you will see those things out there. So hopefully that addresses that. So there's a question here from Danielle. Are light workers protected against a virus? Typically, I'd be freaking out, but have been very, very pleasantly calm. Even my kids are impressed. Do you want to channel that, or do you want to take that question?
Oh, well, I mean, this is the way I look at it. And, we'll just consciously channel this in. Those of us who have been working on our energy fields for quite a long time have actually expanded. If Barb was here, she'd say, we're expanding our auras every time we come together in these energy transfers. That is the best protection you can have against anything. If it be a virus, like something in physical, or the manifestation of some holographic, tragedy in your life, because your auric field is really what protects you from any of that. And I don't think it necessarily has much to do with like the physical ramifications of a virus, so much as it has to do with matching a vibration. So this virus is a vibration that we're contributing to, and when we get on the path of matching it, then we have some kind of manifestation in the body. But we all know that stress takes us down. I think that light workers don't necessarily have immunity or protection, because I know light workers that struggle with diseases and things in the physical body. And what the guides always come in to say is that's so important on our path. I mean, if there's something that you have manifested physically or otherwise, I can guarantee it's a part of your personal journey, because you're here to heal it, or you're here to teach about it, bringing in some downloads about it, because there's nothing we experience that isn't of great purpose. And, this disease is no different, but I think it comes at a time when we're so focused on non-physical that we have a lot of opportunities to understand things from that, that perspective, most definitely. But I agree with her. I'm very oddly calm about, I just don't feel like, the disease is here and people are talking about, I just don't feel like, I don't really think I'm going to get it. I don't think anybody. I just don't feel aligned with that, and that's the piece that I have. And my kids feel kind of the same way. So I think that we've come to a point where a lot of the work that we've been doing is really getting an opportunity to be put into motion. But what's nice is it's kicking in automatically, which that says a lot for a lot of us who have been working on this stuff for a long time.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. I mean, I think first of all, you are all here right now because you're supposed to be here. So if you're going to drop dead tomorrow of a virus, then you were always going to drop dead tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't a virus, maybe you get hit by a bus. But if something as dramatic as you leaving this planet because of an illness or whatever occurs to you, it was already in your path and not something you were going to avoid because you put it there in your path, because you chose your journey. You chose when to come here, who to come here with, who to meet along the way, and when to leave when your journey was done. So there's nothing to be afraid of other than, well, maybe you'll get a cold for a little while and you'll survive it. If you don't survive it, well, you weren't going to survive it anyway. So everybody's here right now because they're supposed to be here. And as I said earlier, the bigger virus is the fear of the virus. In fact, the virus may not even be that big a deal. But because so many people are psychologically fearful of it, they're probably catching it that way or creating some other imbalance in their body that seems like a virus. I'm not saying there isn't an actual virus out there, but I question where it's coming from. Is it something floating in the air, or is it something that we're creating in our minds? And more pharmaceutical companies are struggling with the fact that drugs and placebos are having similar effects. When people believe that they are healed, they often can heal just as effectively as a drug that they believe will heal them. So is it the drug, or is it the belief in the drug that's healing them? So is it a virus, or is it the belief of the virus that's making people catch a virus? I don't know. Some food for thought. But in any case, you don't have to worry about those kind of things. So I don't think whether you're a light worker or not is really so much the issue. It's really more your vibration aligning with it, for one thing. But as far as whether it turns into anything serious, I think that really depends on your own personal journey. And if it's not your time to go, you're still going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm going to add something to that too, which is kind of an interesting perspective. I was, my family doesn't watch this, so I was at my mom's house. I didn't really.
This would be the one time. They're all sitting around at home, nothing to do.
No, I don't really pay attention. I don't have mainstream news even on my TV, so I don't even watch any of that stuff. So I don't know what the CDC is recommending and the procedures and all these things that people are going through. But when I actually was at a family member's house and realized what the great lengths that they were going to avoid the disease, I thought this is really interesting because not only are we putting all this physical busy work in the way and, cleaning every box that comes into the house from the grocery store with a solution that was, found online, but also every time we're doing that, we're reinforcing the vibration of what we don't want to happen. So we think we're doing something really good where we're, scrubbing everything down that comes into the house with some solution, but what we're putting out into the universe is a reinforcement that something is there and creating it stronger. So that's another thing that I think we got to, kind of come to center with and be rational about.
I mean, we're all gods. So, right? We are all gods.
Yeah.
We just forgot. And when you put a government in a position of God and their recommendations to do all the things Micheila is talking about that our family's doing, that takes that power away from you. It disconnects you from source.
Yes.
And so if you're all gods, there's no such thing as a virus. There's no reason to get sick or have a bad day or whatever, because you're capable of manifesting anything. Now, those individuals who are in power around the world know that better than most average people do. because governments manufacture money out of thin air. They don't ask anyone permission to do it. But if you do it, it's counterfeiting and it's illegal. But banks do it all the time, every day. Right now, the US government's printing $1 trillion a day out of thin air. Well, they understand source energy because they know that they can manufacture money or abundance out of thin air. How come we don't? Well, we do. We can. It's just that we forgot, and we live in a societal structure that reinforces the belief that we have to rely on those at the top to give us our health and our abundance and our sense of peace and joy in life. If anything we're learning at this time, and that people will learn in these years ahead, is that we don't need these individuals and structures above us to give us access to source. We have access to that ourselves. And as soon as each of you starts believing that, I mean really believing it, I don't mean believing it in your mind, but believing it in your way of being, you will also be able to create that. So, all of these sterilization things that people are doing, or stocking up, what's going to happen is in a few months or the year, whenever this whole thing passes, the first companies that are going to go bankrupt are toilet paper manufacturers, because no one's going to need any for a few years. So everybody's stocked up so much that they're not going to need any. So we're going to look back and laugh at this years from now when we realize how everything worked out. But for now, it seems very scary. But keep in mind that if you didn't pay attention to what was going on in the mainstream news, it wouldn't be that scary, because you wouldn't know what's really going on. There are indigenous tribes living in the middle of nowhere who have no idea what's going on, and they're just living their lives, going about their business. They don't know that there's a bunch of crazy people around the world running around being afraid of a virus. So, focus your attention on things that matter, and realize that you're all gods. So Delta's asking, Cindy, Ethann, is it possible to remove other people's density on the fly in the moment to wash it away on the go? Yeah, I mean, I assume you're talking about me doing that, or if you're just talking about in general whether people can do that. As far as the removal of density is concerned, anybody can do that. It's not something that I'm able to do and nobody else can. It's just that not everybody has developed the ability to do it, or has decided that they can do it, right? As I said earlier, we're all gods, so you don't need me to do this. I've just simply come into this life with that awareness and ability to do it, and the acknowledgement that I'm capable of it. But everybody can do that. And a lot of the struggles we're going through in these years are really to remove that collective density anyway. But if you're talking about if you can remove it using me as a conduit, sure, you can do that on the fly anytime, just simply by holding that intention.
Another point I'll make while he's looking at the questions about the hoarding of resources, that really is us coming to terms with our service to self model on this planet that can't come with us into the fifth dimension. And I think a lot of people are coming to realize how we have jumped into action and really been so focused on the self that we haven't allowed others the same equal opportunity. And that's going to have ramifications, right? It has ramifications on us already. So sometimes we're going to run into circumstances that are meant to help us come to awakenings about parts of ourself that need to change. So I see that embedded, in this whole situation, how that more reptilian masculine or service to self model is being shown to us in abundance. We're mirroring it right now in the collective and meant to see it for what it is and attempt to change it as well.
Question for you.
Okay.
Have the guides said anything about a next step for current light workers as far as helping others? Will there be more light workers coming into leadership positions, or will people just step into their own abilities and light?
Well, it's really across the board. I've had a lot of different messages on this. One of the most significant ones that has been coming into my personal sessions is there's a grand reorganization going on right now, vibrationally, where a lot of those, those of us who've been light workers for quite some time are drawing cosmic family members and, partnerships and people like resources from other planets that you've been with in other timelines that are here to create something really big in the fifth dimension. So I certainly do see that. But interestingly, not unlike many of us are kind of in this cocoon and separated from everyone else, I think a lot of those who are on the leading edge of serving humanity on the other side of this are kind of in this re-templating process of their personal lives, getting things in order, changing, moving, purging relationships. I see that constantly. And I really think this kind of beginning phase of 2020 for a lot of light workers is a personal time, a physical realignment of your life to embark on something new. It's kind of like that Mary Magdalene story that I brought into the earlier event, where she was purging stuff through the physical body. I think that's going on a little bit too, right now. And the biggest message, and I shared this with my community this past week, was not to jump to action right now, but to take a breath and go slowly, deliberately, because we do sometimes come from that need to control or that resistance in us to try to fix, and that isn't always where we're best aligned. The example I used was, my calendar books up like 7-8 months in advance, so I'm always like blocking things in my calendar, but I find that the day that I'm going to do a transmission is always significant. Like I just filmed my inner circle transmission yesterday. And 7 months out, I never could have known that this was going to happen. But if I just stay aligned with what I'm here to do, I find that everything falls in place to serve people exactly how it's meant. So if I'm not constantly trying to get ahead of it and control and force and change, because, let's face it, we have a lot of issues on the planet right now. And I know so many people in this community take that really personally, and we want to make change in so many different areas, but a lot of us are here to raise consciousness because that's the root cause of all of these issues. So you really have to be aligned with what you're here to do, and some of us are coming into that right now, or we're being redirected into a different way of thinking about our service than we did before. Some of us were grid workers. We were doing the gridding. We were here holding the points for the new grid to come in, and that's kind of done now. So we're moving on, or we're preparing to offer something different than what we did before. And finally, a lot of us have had these different soul fragments that have been vibrating out there. So we've done all these different things. We've done the Reiki, we've been a massage therapist, we've taken a healing course. And we've been kind of operating in these separate timeline energies, and we're merging those right now big time. So I see that as well, where we're gathering up these parts of us, but we're putting them together in a really unique way to strengthen our service to humanity. And that's been coming through across the board in my readings. And I definitely feel like there are waves of light workers that are waking up and kind of joining the collective party here, if you will. So a lot of us are here opening the door or mentoring or initiating others to begin, right, to offer something for humanity. So, sure. Yeah.
I think I see that happening too, even in the mainstream to some degree, but it's hard at this point to see mainstream leaders who appear to be doing things altruistically. But it is coming into being more and more, and you're starting to see it in little pockets here and there, but we're not seeing it in any huge way yet. But I do think that we're going to start seeing that wave happen in the decades ahead. The need for that is going to come more into being as we go forward.
Yeah, a lot of people have come to me lately, and they've been giving the example that they've been serving or they've created something that really hasn't manifested fully for them. Like they aren't really receiving abundance for it, or the clients aren't coming, or they can't sustain it. And And the guides have been saying that we are moving through this energy so fast. It's like we can't really hold on to a lot of things just yet. So if we're forcing them out of the box, like outside of the realm of our divine plan, which is in divine time, then we haven't seen that growth that we've wanted. It's kind of like the guides say, call and response. When humanity's ready to receive something, we're always ready to offer it. But until that happens, if we try to force it, it really doesn't come. So I think that's what we're working through in the early 2020s, is kind of like this realignment and support, right? Where all those soul fragments come together and align to really hold and ground the things that we know need to be here long term.
Yeah, I think also it's important to note that we're not only heading into a future where leaders are going to become more enlightened, but also we're heading into a future where leaders are less necessary.
Yeah.
We're moving into a society that's not hierarchical so much, and eventually not at all. Not that leaders aren't important, but when you're in a society where leaders are focused very much on self and not the people that they are leading, we end up with the kind of society we live in now. But what's happening now, and it's already happening, we are, and again, back to 2008 with the start of cryptocurrencies, that also started the development of blockchain technology, which allows us to have a leaderless society. So we're starting to see that come into being, and I think that's really what's going to proliferate in the 2020s through 2040s, is we're going to have decentralized institutions. So banks that have no centralized authority, no centralized banker, where we all control the economy as opposed to a bank controlling it. In a very simple sense, if you take Bitcoin as the top cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is not governed by any bank or controlled by any bank or printed by any bank or controlled by any governments at all either. It's orchestrated by all of the people in the world who manage the network. So as an example, I have a little electronic device in my house that's called a Bitcoin node, and it helps to support the whole network. So in a sense, I'm part of the bank. Everybody can do this. So as we go forward into the future, our financial system is not going to be supported by Wells Fargo or Bank of America or the Federal Reserve or whatever. It's going to be all of us that support the financial system and that create the financial system and that uphold it for each other. So, and that's also going to be happening in many institutions. Imagine if we didn't have to have governments, because we don't really need a centralized authority to make our decisions for us anymore, because we can take a collective consensus of everybody. I mean, we have the internet now, so we don't really need a leader to decide what needs to be done. Everybody can decide that, and that information can be known instantaneously. So those kinds of technologies are also going to support us moving into a society that's freer and more fair, and that's not controlled by a few at the top. So these are, so I see it coming into being in multiple different ways, not only more enlightened leaders, but also a society that doesn't necessarily require them either.
Yeah, the guides call it, they say like tribal communities and councils. That's the way they look at what's springing forward, because in their dimension, when we speak with councils or collectives, they are all vibrating in the same frequency and they have resonance with each other. So they come together for a similar assignment, but that assignment is in the highest integrity of all. And that's really what we're moving towards, is a structure that can be led by enlightened people, leaders, because it's in the highest integrity for all and we have that resonance. And that's what unity consciousness is all about. Like when we talk about heart coherence, it's not inequality, and the inability to source or resource because there's a centralized system, but it's the people coming together to support the people. And that's what that looks like.
Next question, does sacred space protect us from this physical virus?
I'm sorry, does
sacred space protect us from this physical virus?
Well, I alluded to creating a sacred space or a sanctuary in your home during this time, which I think is like so fun to do because we're so energetically sensitive. I don't know that that protects us, and I don't really love protection so much. And that was one of the first things that I was taught when I started to channel, which goes against a lot of people's model on this. Because the second you set up protection, you've already acknowledged that there's something that you need to protect against, which is straight alignment with whatever you don't want to come into your life. And that's why I prefer, strengthening your field or, creating a sacred space that brings you joy or happiness, that feels good to you, because that's how we're going to draw or magnetize the likeness. And actually, I think that when we do that, like I was, speaking of earlier with the aura, when we expand our aura, it's not just about protection so much as it is magnetizing an experience for us and resources and things like that. I just did an inner circle before this one, a course where the guides brought in this really beautiful breath work, and it was very simple. I know I've talked about it, so I'm not going to review it here, but what happens is our Merkaba, which is a part of our technology, is a natural retriever for us. So when we are constantly strengthening our aura or expanding our energy field, we activate our Merkaba, which isn't just about time travel and stuff like that. It actually retrieves data, information and resources for us that we need. And it shows up automatically. And so that's a really cool way to kind of get into the flow with things that you want to experience as opposed to focusing on what you don't, want to experience.
So apparently cats are asking for cuddles.
Cats?
Yeah.
Oh.
Cats are watching our show.
I have to say, I'm not a cat person, but I have a dog at home. And I can tell she's affected by the energy. Like, I can really tell she's absorbing it. I can just look at her and I know they're transmuting it all, like, big time. So she's just acting a little funny, like something is off. So our little fur babies need a love from us right now.
Lily is asking if I work with Saint Germain because he has so much financial insight. I don't think Germain's ever come up.
No, Metatron for him, for sure. We very early on had a lot of Metatron for him.
Metatron's quite the taskmaster.
Yeah.
For any of you who've had interactions with Metatron, he's no joke.
He's no joke. He's very loving, but very stern.
Yeah.
And gets straight to the point.
Get your work done.
Get your work
Quit
done.
Quit messing around.
That was our joke about Metatron early on. When he'd come in a roundabout way, he'd say, "Go do your work. Go do your work."
Be careful what you ask for. Okay.
I have a general one. I haven't done this before, this energy transfer. Is this what it is? We just put questions out there like this?
No, we're going to do that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
We haven't done it yet.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. That was your question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, stay tuned.
And there's new people online, so we'll explain that.
Yeah, we'll explain that in a minute.
Yeah.
Sandra's asking, can we do something to cover financially a bit in these hard times to come by Bitcoins? Well, I don't suggest you get involved in buying cryptocurrency unless you understand what you're getting into, because it's a very volatile market. And now, I don't know where you live, Sandra, but in the United States, they're printing a lot of money right now. And they are supposed to start sending out $1,000 checks to everyone in the U.S. starting in mid-April. I think every month for, I believe, anyone who's making under $65,000 a year or something. So you're all going to get free checks in the mail anyway. Not that they're free, because you're going to be taxed to get for that money that they're printing in the years ahead. So assuming you pay your taxes, which I generally recommend against, but that's a whole nother subject. Anyhow, so that'll probably tide you over a little bit anyway. And so it's not really going to be as bad as not having any money at all. Now, if you have money to buy cryptocurrency and that's what you're asking, the thing I would say is I believe that cryptocurrencies are going to be a major part of our economic system in the years ahead. And I think that's partly why the current system is starting to collapse a little bit, is because better systems are coming into being. So we are going to see a lot of banks going under in the years ahead, and many banks are actually moving into the cryptocurrency space. So this is a real thing. It's not something that, that is not being acknowledged by the mainstream system. But that having been said, it's a brand new asset class or financial system. And it's hard to say where it's going to be in 20 years. Either Bitcoin in 20 years will be $1 million, or it may not even be around. We don't really know. I don't think it'll not be around, and I do think it's more likely it's going to be worth a lot more in 10 years versus now. But you have to have the long-term view if you're going to invest in cryptocurrency, because it's a highly volatile asset, and with the current financial system being in a meltdown, it'll probably go up and down and all over the place, and you'll probably have a heart attack before you ever make enough money to be able to live off of it in the future. But if you have the stomach for that, and you're savvy enough to understand what you're getting into, then yeah, I think long term it's a good investment. But don't take my word for that. Make sure you know what you're doing. It's not like investing, although it's probably better than investing in stock markets right now, because those are in a free fall at the moment. But everything is right now. Even typically when stocks go down, gold goes up. But at the moment, everything's going down. But I would say long term meaning 10 to 20 years long term, the best things are going to be gold and silver and cryptocurrencies, some cryptocurrencies, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, those sorts of things. So, but there are going to be many other opportunities like that. This is the start of a whole new economic system, and what other things are going to come down the line, we don't know yet.
I'm going to give my personal perspective on that, because so many of us go through transitions in our life where financial abundance is an issue. And I see it in session all the time, and I've gone through it personally myself. And the guides brought in a message about imprinting, right? So everything has a vibrational imprint. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's on the currency. Sometimes it's the people who are offering us the currency that are the vibrational, inequality. And when someone raises their vibration, a lot of times their clients all fall away, and they're like, "What did I do wrong?" And they're like, "Oh, well, you're just going somewhere new, so you're going to manifest abundance from somewhere else." But what happens is when we get really resistant and fearful around that, and we're trying to hold on to something that's falling away, we put a lot of distortion in the field to manifest the new. And even when I made this shift, I was a stay-at-home mom. I lived in a very great neighborhood. I had no reason to concern over money, nor did I think I would lose any money. But I went through a very turbulent time where money was going through my fingertips like insane. And I was holding on in resistance and freaking out. And I got to the point where I had to just let it go. And I thought, I'm just going to hold my hands up, let it go, and I'm going to create the new. And I have to tell you, as soon as I did that, the new things started to come in and the abundance came back. So sometimes we go through a shift where whatever, however we were manifesting can no longer be. And if we are going to pay attention to everything that's falling away and constantly hold on to that in resistance, we're not allowing the space for the new to come in. And that lends itself really well to this whole idea of creativity, where we're meant to explore right now the authentic parts of us that we're meant to source for. If we're going to pay attention to what we're losing, we're not going to have the bandwidth or the energy, the currency to focus on those things, which is really where the new abundance comes from. And it doesn't have to be that we have to wait for a new financial system to come in to support us. Right now, what I do, it really fully exists in the fifth dimension. Ethan and I have created timelines that don't really hold on to much third dimensional stuff anymore. And, I think we all have the opportunity to do that right now, to actually make that leap, but it doesn't come without also making a leap of faith. I know he's made it in his personal life at a point where he was going through a transition. I've done it. I've seen so many other people do it. We're doing it as a collective right now, and that's what's important to remember. So if you can align with what, the next steps are, and not try to force it, and not try to pay too much attention to what you're losing at the moment, you open up the space to receive.
Yeah, I'll share my personal story a little bit along those lines, and then we'll do the energy transfers. We're getting a little bit late. Well, actually, no, I forget we have time. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a transition like this occurred back in 2010. And some of you know my story because I've said it, I've told it before. I think it's a good illustration of what happens when you hit a financial obstacle in life. And it's, keep in mind that you're always going to end up where you need to be. Life always works out because you planned this life for yourself. So there's nothing really to fear. If you end up on the streets and you're broke, well, you were always going to do that. So why fear it? Just enjoy the journey of the life that you have, whatever that happens to be. There's value in all of it. Eckhart Tolle talks about how when he first became enlightened, he was a university professor and he was contemplating suicide. And in the moment of deciding to commit suicide, he became enlightened. And when he became enlightened, he realized none of that even mattered. So here's a university professor decided to go sit on a park bench and feed pigeons for 2 years, and he was in a state of bliss. He didn't care about money or prestige or any of those other things that we care about. So the money doesn't really matter. Now, back in 2010, I was very successful in the mainstream sense of what that is, and had a successful company and relationship, and was in the financial industry as well, and was doing really well. And well, everything fell apart in the course of the year ahead. Company went under, relationship broke up, lost a lot of my friends and people who I considered my family, and essentially went broke over the course of the next 12 months to where, I had, prior to that, I had no, there was everything I wanted I had. So I had nice stuff, nice material things, I had plenty of money, to where I couldn't afford to heat my house, and where my power was being cut off, and my my gas was being cut off. So in the wintertime, I would keep the heat down so low that my pipes actually froze, and then I had to turn it back up so they wouldn't freeze. I couldn't afford groceries. So actually that's when I met Micheila. She felt sorry for me and started dropping off grocery bags at my front door, because everybody's afraid I was going to starve to death. But I don't actually require much food, so it was actually perfectly fine. But anyhow, that all happened to me at that time. And well, I had this insane idea to put on an expo, which I couldn't afford because I couldn't even afford to pay my own bills, and I thought I was going to end up homeless any day. I had no car, so I had to walk places. So I went from having everything to having nothing in a span of a year and a half or so. And but I knew that this expo was something I wanted to do. But I was a little naive then and didn't know what it cost or anything. But so we put on the first expo. I'm thinking, you build it, people will come. We built it. Hardly anyone came. Just barely got through that by the skin of my teeth financially. Put on the second expo and thought, and I, of course, I had met Micheila then, and she had, the first expo was when she channeled publicly. And so I had access to her channeling at the time. And so I asked the guides, will we sell enough tickets at the first expo to cover the expenses? And the guides never answer your questions directly. They always tell you what you need to know, not what you want to know. And sometimes, in rare cases, what you need to know and want to know line up, but not often. And in my case, that wasn't the case. They said the expo will happen. And, well, the expo did happen. Of course, I barely managed to get through by the skin of my teeth with the help of some friends, and financially managed to pull it off. Second expo, again, will I sell enough tickets to cover the cost of the expo? The expo will happen. And we had almost nobody at the second expo. And it was about $30,000 cost for the venue alone. And well, normally, and since then, ever since then, and even the first expo, the venues don't actually let you put on an event unless you've already paid for it. Did I freeze? Oh, looks like we're fine. some reason it looks like I'm frozen here.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay. But for some reason, this particular venue decided not to bill me. And they forgot. Who knew, right? And so the expo came and went, and almost no one came. And I owed all this money to the venue. Well, the venue went bankrupt. So, well, I didn't have to pay that bill. So, and since then, the expo never has made money, but there are now other resources through the other work that I do that help to pay for all the things that we do. So my point is that the money doesn't matter. The path that you're on, if you follow that path, the resources you need will come, or the opportunities will occur for you to do those things. Even if it is the hotel goes bankrupt, who would ever expect that to happen? But because of those synchronistic things happening, we're still doing the next expo this year. And it all started from a time when there was no rational reason for someone like me to be putting on a conference like that. I'd never done one before. I had no idea the first thing about doing one. The first one was a big disaster in terms of organization. We had no idea what we were doing. And financially, I had no means to do it. And yet, the 8th one is coming up this year. So you don't have to let money dictate whether you live your life or not. Just live your life. Follow what it is that you feel called to do, and the people and resources and opportunities and synchronicities will fall in line to make that happen and make that possible for you. All right? So let's do the energy transfer, and then we can continue our conversation afterward if we have any more questions. So, for those of you who are new, I assume your first time, right? Okay. All right, and those of you online who this is new for. So I do these events here, usually about once a month, and also do a live stream on Facebook, I think last week. And the purpose of this event, and really it's very timely considering all the fear that's in the world right now and all the density that's being expressed. We as human beings and in this time of the collective consciousness, we're processing and working through a lot of density. So that's why there's so much fear right now, is although it may seem like a negative, as people go through this fear, on the other side, the density that's associated with that will also go away, and we'll be able to move into a brighter future because the density isn't there. But that having been said, there's no reason to suffer through all of that. We can move through this with a little bit more ease and grace. Now, somebody asked earlier about me working with Germaine, but I don't have any familiarity whether I do or don't. But early on, when I started working with Micheila, and we channeled what it is that I'm doing, and also Barb's joining us online. She's not with us in person today, but it was really meeting the both of them, and I met Barb just before Micheila that sort of resulted in all of the things that we're doing now and these events and the energy transfers and such. But what I came to find out is that, and through Barb looking at photographs of me as a child, that I had a very unique energy field, aura, and then after meeting Micheila, channeling about this and discovering that I had this unique ability to take on the density of other people. Now, density, and I refer to it as sort of karmic density. Let's use the current world situation as an example. So, karma, we might say, is the experience, is the virus itself. It might be a pattern that has pre-existed this particular virus. Maybe it's the Spanish flu, which actually was not from Spain, it was from Texas, so it was actually the Texas flu, but anyhow, the Spanish flu. So let's say the karma of that still exists in our collective consciousness. And so the karma or the pattern of that is repeating now as the current flu, which is the Chinese flu, but which may be an American flu too. We don't really know in the end. We might know in 10 or 15 more years. But anyhow, the karma is that experience. But the density is the dense energy that is around that experience or encompassing that experience. That it's a density that's causing the fear and negative emotions and people hoarding toilet paper and all of these things. Is the density. It's the suffering that's taking place around that karmic experience. If you remove the density, then all you have is the flu or the virus and no fear. And so the purpose of this process is to remove the density around the karmic experiences that you have in your lives and that we have in the collective consciousness as well. And for most people, these densities will carry throughout your lifetimes. So for example, let's say you experienced a trauma in a past life, and let's say you and your loved one experienced some sort of trauma, and you both died in this past life, and you come into this life and you meet that person again as a soulmate, and you're with them again, and you still have that karmic density. So you have that memory of that trauma, and so you meet that person in this life, and there is this sort of underlying fear that is there in the relationship. Well, that trauma stays with you as an energy or a density in your energy field. If you remove that, then now you can both have a perfectly good relationship without this unconscious fear or density that's there. Or maybe you'll decide that the only reason you came together was to deal with that density, and you won't want to see each other anymore, and that's fine too, and you can part ways joyfully. So the purpose of this is to allow all of you to not have to go through lifetimes or this lifetime to go process your densities, but rather for you to release it all at once now. And now, not everybody's going to be releasing all of your density all at once, and that's not really a wise thing to do necessarily. From time to time, I have people who email me after events like this. So if you're not prepared for this and ready for those consequences, then you may want to leave before we start. Although the energy's been sort of processing all throughout, I've been feeling it in the whole time we've been talking. But anyhow, when you process a lot of density at once, so if you were to relieve all of your density or a substantial amount of it, there's such a major change in your energy field that your life may turn on a dime tomorrow. And that may seem like a great thing, but I have a lot of frantic people who email me from around the world whose lives collapse the next day. And they ask, can you fix it? Well, I mean, once the vibration changes, you can't undo what's done. But because right now, the reality in which you live, the lives in which you live, the emotions you feel, the fear you're experiencing, and the fear the world is experiencing is a result of this density that's existing collectively. If we were to remove all that density globally right now, all that fear would go away. Toilet papers, would stock back up on the shelves in grocery stores, and everyone would be happy, and they would just not be worried about this silly little virus thing going around. And it would probably all go away by tomorrow anyway because of that. So at any given point, your vibration attracts your reality, the people around you, the circumstances, your health, and so on. So when we remove that density, you'll notice a big change in your life, your perspectives, your viewpoints. Now, if you're already walking around with not a lot of density, then those changes may be more subtle. Or if you've been doing these events regularly or using the YouTube videos from these events or Facebook videos, then your changes may be a little bit more subtle because you may have already made a lot of progress. But density, as it goes away, is often reaccumulated little by little just by living your day-to-day life, watching the mainstream media, being around other people who may have a lot of density. So this process can be repeated as often as you need to keep moving in that direction. So, as Micheila said earlier about, there's a lot of, in the spiritual genre, people have this fear around protecting themselves from one another, which I agree with her that I don't think protection works. I don't think protection is the right thing to do either. because protection assumes fear of something that's outside of you that can hurt you or harm you. So anytime you put a protective bubble around yourself, well, why are you doing that? Because something out there is going to harm me. Well, you're all gods. So what is there to harm you? So just the belief in the need for protection sort of creates the situation in your life where you need protection. What if instead you just all became gods? What if instead your consciousness and vibration were so powerful that you didn't need protection from anything? That's what we're trying to achieve here, is we're going to remove that density that you're carrying in your energy field to an extent. And at the same time, speaking of the collectives that I work with, I don't know that Saint Germain is one of them, but there is a collective on the 13th dimension that utilizes this physical body to facilitate this process for all of you. So it's not really me doing anything. I can feel when they're doing something, but I'm not actually really doing anything actively myself. My main purpose in being here is that before this incarnation, I came into this life in order to do this. And so this physical body was prepared essentially to sort of be a bridge between the 13th dimension and the third, fourth dimension that we're walking now, so that this 13th dimensional collective can facilitate this process between them and all of you through this physical structure. So only thing that makes me unique really is that I can stand in both dimensions at the same time. And where they can't really stand in this dimension to do this for you, and you can't necessarily, some of you may be able to stand in the 13th dimension to meet them where they are. So I'm just simply here as an anchor in both dimensions to allow for the free flow of this energy between both all of you in this dimension and for them in that dimension. So this process is a two-part process where I will ask you to send all your density to me. For those of you who are new to this process, I've been doing this for many years. You don't have to worry about any harm coming to me in the process. In fact, according to Barb and channeling with Micheila, this has been going on since I was born in this life without my conscious awareness, because prior to incarnation, I gave permission to this 13th dimensional collective to utilize this physical structure for that purpose. So it's only been the last several years that I've started doing this with intention. And I'm still here and I'm perfectly fine. So you don't have to worry about your density harming me in any way. But the benefit to you is you don't have to carry it home with you, or well, most of you are probably sitting at home right now, so you don't have to carry it with you into your future. And at the same time, this 13th dimensional collective will be sending an energy from the 13th dimension through my heart center to all of yours, including all of you who are participating online. And that is intended to raise your consciousness and vibration. And also, 13th dimensional energy, as is true with any dimension, also contains information. So that information may not make sense to you intellectually right away, but what will happen is over the next days, weeks, months, years, you will start to perceive your reality differently because of this information that is coming through with the energy. So this is a circular process. You're going to keep sending the density to me, and I'm going to keep sending this white light energy. You can picture it as that if you like, from this 13th dimension. There's no wrong or right way to do it. As long as you're just willing to be here and participate, the process is facilitated by them. So they will pull the density from you and they will send this energy to you from there. If you want, you can certainly be more an active participant. You can focus on things in your life that may be causing you stress or negative emotions, or some trauma maybe you've had that you are aware of, and you can visualize that and project that as a dark cloud of energy, send it to me. And just keep doing that all throughout. So we'll probably go about 10 or 15 minutes for this process. And I play a little music in the background. Those of you who have been here before are familiar. It's Mark Romero, who's a friend of ours and who's spoken at our expo several times. high vibrational musician. I play that just to sort of drown out the background music, and it's very conducive to this work. So if you like his stuff, then you can find out at markromeromusic.com. So I'll play that throughout. My eyes will be closed, and when we're done, I'll ask you to open your eyes. Now, Micheila's, which we don't do this normally together, but in light of the circumstances in the world right now, we decided to do a joint event today, where I'm going to be doing the energy transfer I just described, and she's going to be channeling in an activation at the same time. So it may be a little bit more intense than usual for some of you. Some of you who are energy sensitive, you may feel this, maybe as a vibration or a temperature change in the body or any number of different things. You may have Kundalini experiences. Some of you may enter states of bliss. Some of you may feel absolutely nothing. And it doesn't really matter, the sensory experience, because at the end of the day, the benefits will still be there. And the main thing you're looking for is, do you feel a little lighter and a greater sense of joy in the days and weeks ahead? That's a sign of less density and higher consciousness. So if you notice that, then that means there was probably a lot more change that took place that will make itself known as time goes forward. So, did you have anything you wanted to say before we start? Okay. All right. So play a little music in the background. For those of you who are online, participate as if you're here. And the videos from these events can be reused to facilitate the process as well, because this is not while we may be experiencing a linear human timeline right now, where yesterday is yesterday, tomorrow is tomorrow, the 13th dimension does not experience that. For them, everything is timeless and all things happen simultaneously. So if tomorrow you use the video from this event to redo this process, for them, that moment is happening in this moment. So you can, through the video, essentially follow the process. They will be aware of your intention, and this physical structure is always available for them to use for that purpose. So if you find this beneficial, then repeat it as often as you would like using the videos, or come back to our events and do that as well. So, so let's start that process now. So close your eyes and breathe comfortably. And focus your intention on releasing any density to me. And keep doing that all throughout. And we're going to extend the reach of this energy transfer and activation to a more global level. Not just those of you who are in this room and watching online, but to extend it to the collective consciousness as well. So just visualize, if you'd like, sending that density to me, or just wherever you are and whatever you're doing, just hold the intention to participate. And keep sending that density to me all throughout until I ask you to open your eyes. And at the same time, this 13th dimensional collective will be sending a white light through my heart center to all of yours, intended to raise your consciousness and vibration, expand your energy field. And that'll be happening all throughout as well. So I'm going to be silent now, play a little music, and come back when we're done. Open your eyes when you're ready. Okay, so some of you may have felt that energy or experienced emotions or any number of things. Whether you felt something or nothing is not what's important. Just observe how your life is in the days and weeks ahead. And that's really a better measure of the benefits of the process we just went through. Do you have any? We see stuff.
I saw so much stuff. Oh my gosh. Well, we had a lot of Ascended Masters here. I had Great White Brotherhood. I had Saint Germain. I had Michael. I had Divine Mother. But then I saw a lot of beams of light come in from different cosmic collectives, and there was a huge, huge mantis in the room working on us, which I appreciate. I saw a lot of the stuff that I usually do for you, but what was interesting was it was almost like this portal opened up within the earth where there was did you see that too? It's like it was almost like this multi-dimensional thing. Yeah, like there was a lot of energy kind of being transmuted through the earth for sure. So a lot of stuff. I saw a lot of stuff going on.
Okay, so I am quite a bit energy sensitive, so before you started your music, or maybe you started your music, I did feel it in my body a lot, and I had a twitching in my head, and then I could see a lot of different faces.
Yeah.
One I think that was the most interesting though was this rabbit-looking being that had weird sunglass type things over his eyes. That's something new I haven't seen, but I saw a lot of, like you said, like portal, but it was like multi-layered throughout different dimensions and space-time.
Yeah.
Kind of rippling through. And I feel like there was some body work. Like the bodies were being worked on. So just a little bit extra, lots of lights, lots of beings, lots of different eyes of different people and things coming in.
I saw a lot of color too. I had a lot of different colors changing. Like when we first started, it was this bright white, and then it was like there was some purple, and then there was some green. I was just seeing the different. But at one point, I saw the different orbs, right, kind of coming in, and I could tell there was a shift in the guides, coming more from, like I had the Ascended Masters here, then I had all these purple kind of orbs come in, and then I could tell we were working with cosmic families. Yeah. We got a lot of support in different ways, different dimensions, I think, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Amanda is asking, and this is probably a better question for you. Can you tell me why so many of light workers are exhausted upon waking? Is there anything we can do to prevent this or to re-energize?
Yeah, I think it's unique, and it's really across the board. When we're sleeping, obviously we're time traveling. So many of us are doing that work when we're sleeping, I think more than ever right now. I've noticed it myself. Not that I'm so exhausted when I awaken, but I'm really observing the different timelines I'm traveling on when I'm dreaming, and waking up and having like a distinct remembrance of that. And I've actually had a lot more people telling me I'm showing up in their dreams as well. So that's definitely happening. Anytime we have any really thick, dense experience going on the planet, especially when we sleep, because we go into that state where we release resistance. If we're here as a healer or a conduit, we're going to be channeling that energy at night, across the board. But we're also becoming more sensitive, so I think we have to keep that in mind, especially when it comes to man-made frequencies. And, one of the suggestions that's a really practical one that's been coming in a lot for people in session work is just turn off the Wi-Fi at night, put your phone in another room, keep all the electronics away from you, because, we're becoming far more powerful in terms of telepathic and empathic, but also, it goes both ways. We're sensing more, and some of us aren't used to that. Another thing that is a really simple, basic one that the guides have been bringing in is like doubling up on water. because we have a lot of energy moving right now and we're channeling a lot of energy and we carry that on our water. So sometimes that exhaustion can be the dehydration, associated with all of this moving energy that we're doing.
Okay. Larissa's asking, how can I tolerate those that just can't help throwing all the chaos when I constantly remind them, I'm sorry, I'm not interested nor live in that fear?
Yeah, I had this question earlier in my inner circle community, and I hate to say it, but we find ourselves in pockets of consciousness where we are healers, and we are conduits for moving that energy. So it's really all how you look at it, right? It's your perception of it and your ability to hold space for people that's most important. I think that we are becoming more adept at channeling that energy quicker as long as we don't hold on to it. And when we feel like we have people that are contaminating us constantly, that isn't moving towards unity consciousness, And I wanted to state this earlier when you mentioned about protection of the aura. In the book that I've downloaded, the Pleiadians are actually saying that when we bubble ourselves in light, we're creating more separation. And I know that kind of runs rampant in the community, that we have to bubble ourselves in light, and there are people that have dark energies and reptilians and all these things. And really that whole notion is causing us to weaken our structure, because when we are in unity consciousness, we are all stronger across the board. So it's just really important to know that if we can expand more, we can hold more.
Yeah, it's possible you're hanging out with the wrong people too. I don't know. I mean, I think you have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's easy for me to say because that's kind of how I live my life these days. Is
Yeah.
I really rarely am ever in environments that are not like this. So my life is almost entirely in this space. Now, occasionally I have to go to a government office or something, but it's very uncommon that I have to do that. So, how to deal with that is to not occupy as little of your life as you need to in environments with people who are focused in more chaotic, stressful, negative emotions. And, keep in mind, a lot of us, especially in the alternative fields, focus a lot about eating healthy and doing yoga and all this stuff, but you can eat as healthy as you want, but if you fill your mind full of and your emotions full of garbage, then that's just as unhealthy, if not worse, than eating hamburgers and fries every day. So if you watch a lot of TV shows or films or things that create negative emotions in you, that you you can certainly watch those from time to time, as long as you can maintain the perspective that it's just a movie. But if you live the things that you're watching, those emotions become a part of you, and that the information is just the same as information from eating food. So you have to pay attention to those things too, because they're all creating the vibration of the people around you that you're attracting. So the more you elevate your consciousness, the more those people who are in a more negative state are going to not want to be around you. So you won't have to tell them that you're not interested in what they have to say. They're just not going to be interested in saying it around you. So, you'll make a whole new circle of people and friends who are more resonant to who you are. The only reason you're attracting these experiences right now is because you are vibrating that way. And so you're surrounding yourself with those kind of experiences. The more you go in the direction of a higher consciousness, the more and more the people who will come into your life are going to be matching that. So I would say, it's a two-part process. One, try to reduce the amount of time you spend in environments with people like that. And the other part is keep working on your own consciousness. As you do that, you'll rise above those things. Or even if you're in environments where an individual is that way, it won't really bother you. The problem isn't really that these individuals around you are expressing themselves in a fearful way and you don't want to be there. The problem is that you don't want to be there. which is really more a sign of your own resistance as opposed to a sign of that other person's negative emotions. If you can be in an environment where everyone is being negative and have absolutely no effect on you, in that state of non-resistance is where you want to exist in the world. The world can be chaotic, and you can be that calm center in the midst of that and not be affected. That's really the best way to be. But as you head in that direction, eventually what will happen is more and more people around you will be more like you, and you won't have to deal with that so much. But, you know, for many of us who are teachers in this awakening of consciousness that's taking place in the world, we will have to find ourselves in environments with people who are in states of fear. And we'll have to maintain that calm for them. So that may be a task for all of you to take a look at.
Yeah, I agree. As I've gone through my transition, I have completely shifted the group of friends and people that are around me constantly. And what I see in the community is a lot of people are feeling more and more isolated because of that. So they feel alone and they don't have people that they resonate. And I don't think that's the point at all, that we're supposed to be alone, you know, but I think we're just going through this wonky period where we're readjusting and reconnecting to people who are more in resonance with us. But I also think it's a nervous system thing, you know, what you're talking about, being able to be immersed in family, you know, dinners and things where people don't maybe have the same view as us, and really stay aligned with what we know, because there's parts of us that, even though have ascended, we still don't trust internally. And I think that's why we're always trying to prove, you know, we're trying to prove it to ourselves as much as we're trying to prove it to the outer world. And that's really throwing a lot of chaos into our structure. And so I think it's a nervous system issue, right? The more we trust ourselves and the more we are stable in what we know and who we are, we can show up in situations where people don't have those perspectives and still stay in alignment.
Okay, I think we're out of time, but there's tons more questions and comments, so apologize for all of you who we missed. But thank you for joining us today and sharing so many questions and comments with us, and being with us for the last several hours. Have a good rest of the month, and try not to get into trouble. And do something that makes you happy. Use this time to do things that bring you joy and fulfillment. And maybe that project that you put off, that you said you'd never do because you never have the time, most of you have time now. So, and as I said earlier, some of the greatest things come out of the darkest times. So maybe you could create one of those great things that will be something that'll change the world in a few years. So with that, thanks again, and we'll see you all next month.
Thank you.
I think next month we're joined by Brooklyn.
Probably.
I'm not 100% certain, but so next month we should have a 6-hour event here. So the usual, but then we also have a guest speaker coming in as well. She's quite amazing. And if for those of you who are joining next month, assuming that it is her, bring a glass, or if you're joining online, obviously you'll have a glass of water, but if you're coming here in person, then bring a bottle of water, because she's going to charge up all your water for you. And she'll explain why and what the purpose.
She's amazing at that.
Yeah, the benefit of that is when she gets here, but you may want to bring some with you. Well, I think there's water in the lobby, but you may want to bring a bottle because you don't want to drink it all at once. It's something you should probably drink over a course of a week or so. So cool stuff. So we'll see you all next month.